Screen Slurps.
Hello and welcome to Screen Slurps, the movie review podcast where we discuss the good, the bad, and the savage in the world of cinema. I'm Adam Meisner.
And I'm Laura Herlocker.
And could you repeat that? I didn't hear anything you just said.
My name is Laura.
I'm sorry, what?
I don't know sign. Actually, I do know the alphabet in sign language in ASL.
Really?
ASL. I cannot speak. So I could sign my name to you. But you don't know ASL, I don't think. So you wouldn't know what I'm saying.
I don't think that's going to help the podcast listeners out there, but
No.
just so we can fill you all in, the movie of the week is Hush. That's right, Hush. And if you didn't catch what I just said there, I'm saying Hush. You need to shut your mouth because we're doing a podcast episode on the movie Hush from 2016. And Laura, tell me a little bit about this movie, whether I can hear you or not, because this movie actually took me by surprise because I was not expecting it to be about, well, about someone who's completely deaf.
Yeah. So the movie follows this woman who is deaf and mute, and she is a writer, and she's kind of secluded herself to this cabin in the woods to work on her next book. And I think just kind of, she got out of a bad relationship. So I think she's just trying to, get her life together. So she's living alone out in the woods, and obviously, it's a horror film, people. We're in spooky month. And she is being pursued by a serial killer.
Ooh, that's right. I couldn't believe the things that went down in this movie. And it was it's got some quirks to it, some interesting things.
Some goods and some bads.
I totally agree. And I think the two of us are going to get into that in a little bit more detail as soon as we tell you all about our side slurps. That's right. Our side slurps. If this is the first time you're listening to our show, our side slurps are the things that we have done other than watch the movie of the week. Things such as watch other TV shows, maybe other movies, maybe even, jump 30 feet in the air and fall only 10 feet. Maybe we're superhuman.
How does that work? Can you imagine if you could jump 30 feet?
And then just fall only 10 of that feet, and maybe you're flying back down.
That's hot tall. We're like barely over 5 feet. That's like 6 times our height. We're like little hobbits over here.
We've been watching a lot of crazy shows, though. I mean, we've been watching the new Lord of the Rings, and
yeah. We're very much behind, though. Like, we've only seen, I think, 2 or 3 episodes, so we definitely need to pick up.
Yeah, we do.
That is not one of my side slurs because we are behind.
So what have you been up to? What are some of the things you've been doing this past week?
Let's see. What have we been doing? We did watch Jurassic World Dominion. So the newest Jurassic World movie where we have the original, 3 from the very first Jurassic Park come back and reprise their roles.
Man.
That movie sucked.
Yeah, I was going to say, can I just say that was the best part of the whole movie? Was having the 3
Jeff
original
Goldblum,
people?
He can just stand there and not speak, and he's amazing. So Jeff Goldblum, Laura Dern, and I can never remember his name. It's Sam something, right?
Not
Sam Elliott, which is what you're about to say. Sam O'Neill.
Ah, yes.
The 3 of them come back and reprise their roles, and obviously they are great. I love all of them. Like, Laura Dern is a wonderful actress as well. Jeff Goldblum, Sam O'Neill, they're all good. But yeah, it wasn't a good movie.
No.
That's my opinion on it. Which sucks because I love Jurassic Park. And I even like Jurassic Park 2 and 3. Like the one where Sam O'Neill comes back and then the one where Jeff Goldblum comes back with his kid. I thought those were good. Just for some reason, the Jurassic World movies don't do it for me.
No, and I think even Chris Pratt's performance in that movie is just... maybe not even to hate on his acting necessarily. It's cool. Chris Pratt, you do your thing.
He does an action-y thing kind of okay.
Yeah. But I don't know. It's just not something I enjoyed. And
yeah.
I was thinking in the back of my mind watching this movie, very similar to his character in the first Jurassic Park that he was in, which I guess
it's
that's
the same
good.
Character, right?
Yeah, it is the same character, which should be good because you want to be the same character through and through. But I just don't like it. I just don't
Yeah.
like seeing him stand there with his arm up, like, like he's talking to a dog when he
Sensei,
talks to
yeah.
the dinosaurs. I'm like, back, like,
Yeah.
stay.
Yeah, I don't know. Like I said, Jurassic World just doesn't do it for me. So we did watch that. Other than that, I don't know. We've been watching lots of spooky movies. I made Adam. Have we talked about this in the last episode? I don't even remember now. I made Adam watch Beetlejuice for the very first
Yeah,
time.
we
talked about that. It Rings of Power, we're very behind on. I will talk about one of the new TV shows that I've started. So when I was in high school, growing up, kind of around the time of Twilight, there was this other vampire series called Vampire Academy. And it is about a vampire and a Dampier. I think that's how it's pronounced.
Vampire.
A Dampier. They're like half vampires. So they're like super strong humans, essentially. And they are bodyguards to the Strigoi, the vampires.
So there's the vampires and the dampiers.
Yep. And so the series is about this academy, like a private school, where the Strigoi, who are like the vampire, are the Strigoi or the bad people? Whatever. So the vampires and the dampiers are there together, like training to be their bodyguards and, to lead the vampires or whatever. I loved that series when I was growing up. They made a movie a few years ago on like the first book, and the movie was not that great. But they just rebooted and are doing a TV series, and I believe it's on Peacock or Paramount, one of the P streaming services. And I'm actually really happy with it. At first, I was kind of iffy about some of the male actors for like Dimitri and Christian, but they're growing on me. And I'm really excited to watch it. I've watched, I think, only 3 episodes of that as well. So I definitely need to keep going. But it's looking much better than the movie that was made. So
Growing up, did you ever feel curious, like, I really want to be a vampire?
No.
I'd like to know what that's like.
no. I read a lot of vampire stuff. I mean, I'm that age. Like I said, that's when I was in high school, that's when Twilight was like at its peak, right? And you had Blue Bloods, which is another series, a book series I read also about vampires that I was obsessed with.
Isn't that the crime show now, though?
There is a cop show called Blue Bloods. That is not what I read. The one I read, it was actually really interesting. Let me go off on a tangent here. So it was about vampires, but the vampires were the fallen angels. So those who rebelled against God alongside Lucifer, like when he was cast out of heaven. And so all of the vampires on Earth are the fallen angels, like reincarnated as vampires. It's the like having that religious like backstory to it. I don't know. It is so good. That series is so good. Melissa De La Cruz, like the author of that, she nailed it. I'm obsessed. They should make that into a TV series because I would die.
That'd be interesting.
But anyways, I was very much a vampire girl. Like I love fantasy even to this day, and probably because of all those series I read when I was really young. But I myself never wanted to be a vampire.
You're more of a werewolf person?
Maybe. No, I'm more of a fairy. Which kind of segues in right to one of the other things that Adam and I have did this last week is that we did our very first campaign in our new D&D group.
That's true.
Super excited about that. It was tons of fun. So shout out to our DM, Matthew, for putting all that together. And yeah, have we talked about our characters on the show before?
I think we talked about, we sort of prefaced that we were going to be doing it.
Yeah. So I'm a fairy druid in the Circle of the Stars. And yeah, we really just like spent that first time together, like learning how to play. And we did our first battles and it was exciting. I'm really looking forward to meeting up again for our next one.
Yeah, it'll be very interesting.
Matthew left us on a good cliffhanger. So
yeah, Dungeons and Dragons. We'd never played it before in our lives, but this time playing for our very first time was definitely a learning experience, and it was a lot to take in for the first time. But now after playing it this first go around, I think I'm excited to keep on doing it, and it was a lot of fun, especially from my time doing improv. Comedy and things like that, and then going into playing Dungeons and Dragons. I think there's a lot of connection.
A lot of
there.
improv going on for sure. And yeah, I read a really inappropriate book. I can talk about that.
Oh my God.
You know, I am not ashamed to say that I like to read some smut. Who doesn't? Like a lot of women read smut. 50 Shades of Grey, hello. Like Everyone reads smut.
I'll have to
now.
look at some statistics sometime on the amount of people that read.
I mean,
like you do.
after 50 Shades of Grey came out, there was like an explosion of women finally feeling comfortable and men finally feeling comfortable being able to read smut. And
I believe it. Yeah.
I'm not ashamed to admit that I read it. I'll
There should be no shame.
no shame at all. I did read a very interesting one though that it's called The Dragon's Bride and it's by Katie Robert, and it is about a human woman that is essentially like forced to marry a humanoid dragon, and it's just about their relationship. And
We should all be humanoid dragons. I mean, it's just it's just a thing.
very D&D, right? There's like dragon humans in D&D,
I
right? The
think so,
draconic
yeah.
or the dracon, whatever,
Draconi.
something.
Sounds Italian. Draconi.
Draconi. That was stereotypical and bad of us, probably. Sorry, everyone that's Italian. Anyway, I'm going to stop right there. I'm going to end my side slurps there. Adam, what do you got?
Well, what I've been up to this past week, I started playing the brand new version of Overwatch, which is the sequel, Overwatch 2. I gotta say, it is incredibly similar to the original Overwatch. I don't think there's really a whole lot of change in Overwatch 2, honestly, from my personal opinion right now, from playing Overwatch 2 a little bit. But I will say it's a ton of fun. Overwatch 1, if I want to say that, just the original Overwatch, was already a ton of fun, and now that they've blossomed into Overwatch 2, the changes that they have made, which is some new costumes for the characters. There is a new character in Overwatch 2, but I will get to that.
I feel like, did they add new characters in new settings?
I believe there are new areas in Overwatch 2.
Mm-hmm.
I'm not sure if there's new types of games yet, but I was playing some of the original styles of player versus player
like
team
capture
matches
the
and things like that. Yeah, capturing the area and moving the cargo car to your place at the end of the level, things like that. So the game is a first-person shooter that's player versus player, and it's team-based. So you'll be on a team with some other players. The other team will be other players on a team that you're going against. And what I noticed so far was mostly the same characters. There was one new character that I noticed, but the new character that I noticed, to unlock them, you have to get to essentially tier level 55, which is going to take forever, or you just have to play forever and get to tier level 55.
Or spend money.
Or, spend money and subscribe to the battle
That's
pass.
how they get you.
Yep, that's how they get you to get that new
Aren't
character.
those called like gacha games? Like Genshin, what I play?
Yeah.
You know, like to get... You can unlock them if you don't pay, but it takes you a while. So if you give them money, then you can get the goods.
Or if you want to get the stuff quick, then you subscribe to their battle pass and it'll get it. So that's, again, not me down talking the game. I will say the game is a lot of fun to play.
I remember I played it for a little bit. I think I like to play as a tank when I do Overwatch. You're usually, Adam, like support range, I feel like.
Yeah, I like the damage classes or the support classes. The tanks are fun too. I do enjoy the character Wrecking Ball that's literally a hamster.
Because you like the little dwarf guy.
He's great. Torbjorn, he's a little
turret
dwarf that drops a turret. Lots of fun
or
to
you
play as
always
that character.
do the magey
Zenyatta
healer thing. Yeah.
He's the one that throws healing balls to keep people alive. So just a few people there. I also began with Laura watching the TV series Dahmer, which has a lot of, I say backlash to it. It's not even like it's bad.
Backlash.
It's not a bad show.
Intense.
It's just, it's very intense to watch because Jeffrey Dahmer himself was a real man. This show is based on real things that happened in life. And so watching this show, which is essentially like a reenactment of what Jeffrey Dahmer did when he was alive, is intense.
Yeah.
Very intense.
Yeah. I mean, you're just kind of seeing like how cruel and horrible humans can be.
Yeah.
And how fucked up they can be.
Yeah. He was a crazy man. And to see this reenactment with Evan Peters.
Yep, Evan Peters.
With his portrayal of Jeffrey Dahmer, it is so intense.
He's such a good actor. And he is like the perfect person to play Dahmer. And obviously it's done by Ryan Murphy, who we all know started off with Glee and then moved into like American Horror Story. He did like OJ versus the People. You know, he does like the American Crime Story series, Versace, really everything with American Horror Story. And now he's moved into this Dahmer role too. And yeah, Ryan Murphy, his stuff is good. I will say, I think American Horror Story has kind of gone downhill. The new series starts like next week, I think. So it'll be interesting to see how it is. Like the first few seasons were so good. And that's really where Evan Peters like broke out, you know, in the first Murder House, the first season of American Horror Story. He's in that. He's in lots of the other seasons as well. But yeah, he's a great actor, and Ryan Murphy makes good stuff.
Yeah. And with what I've seen so far with the Dahmer series, I've got to say the quality and the content of the episodes, the look of the episodes for the time period. This is taking place in, you know, the 60s and the 90s, and what they're going for in terms of look and everything like that. It looks so authentic for what it's going for. And they even have real well, that's a spoiler for you, but the end of episode 2, they have a real recording of a conversation that happened with a police officer.
Well, I think it was Niecy Nash, the actress, reading it, but I think the dialogue was taken from an actual call because it sounded like Niecy Nash. But they did use actual like news footage in the beginning of the episode. We saw it look like real news footage, and then it kind of switched over into them filming, obviously.
I'll have to look more into that, but it's an
intense show. I mean, fair warning, if you're going to watch it, know what you're getting into.
Absolutely. And the last thing I can say I did this past week is I went to an apple orchard with my mother in Rockford, Illinois. So
I was also there.
just to lighten things up a little from going from Dahmer to
orchards.
I went to an apple orchard. They have the best donuts, by the way. That place was fantastic.
Shout out
to Edward's Apple Orchard.
Is that Rockford? Rockford. Shout out. They have apple cider slushies. So good. Donuts, so good. They make this apple salsa that's delicious.
Life on the farm, baby.
Great place.
So, yeah, it was a good place to go to. And from that, I just want to roll into a little bit of film news that's been going on recently.
I want to talk about something.
Yeah, I got something I want to talk about. We'll fight about it. We'll fight who's going to talk about
Maybe we're going to talk about the same thing.
Probably are. I want to start off by saying, what's going on Saturday Night Live? Why are you botching the news that's been going on with the Try Guys? That's my opinion. That's how I'm going to say it.
Yeah.
But seriously, though, Saturday Night Live has completely, I'm just saying it like that, botched the news
they really dropped
that's been going on with the Try Guys, because the Try Guys have removed Ned from their group for having an affair with an employee that's been on their team. And Ned would always talk about his wife as when he was a member of the show. That was his, big line, was how much he loved his wife. And then he ended up having an affair with an employee for an extended period of time. And so they removed him from the group. Now SNL's making a skit about making fun of the guys for removing him.
Yeah. So I didn't want to bring this up because I could talk about it forever. I'm a really big Try Guys fan. I watched them when they were back in BuzzFeed still, and I followed them to when they made their own company. So I love Keith. I love Eugene. I love Zach. I never really liked the other one. I don't. So, yeah, as you said, Adam, it came out that he was having a relationship with one of his employees, and they let him go. And the 3 remaining Try Guys, they made this heartfelt video kind of explaining everything and talking about how it affected them. They've lost a best friend and a business partner. It's impacted their lives incredibly. So obviously they were a little emotional about it. And it seems like SNL then makes a sketch that instead of focusing on how horrible Ned was and the fact that there was this power dynamic because he was her boss, then he had an affair. Instead, they downplay his affair. It's just he kissed someone, and make fun of the other 3, for being emotional and for talking about what happened. And the thing that makes me most upset, I think, too, is that Bowen Yang was nothing against Bowen Yang. I love him. But like it hurts a little bit that he was part of that sketch because he is like a gay Asian man. And I feel like the fact that he followed along and like went with this sketch is just so like blind to what was happening and what is going on. Like it is so much more than a man just kissing another woman outside of his marriage. Like it is so much more than that. And the fact that SNL totally ignored that is
right.
Just so upsetting. And yeah, I'm going to stop because again, I could go on and on about this.
Yeah, it really makes me upset that they would put this out as a sketch and think that everyone's just going to let that go.
Yeah. But honestly, like, please go watch Try Guys. Keep watching them. Like, Keith and Zach and Eugene are amazing guys and they make really great content. There's some really funny stuff, but also some really like important things that they talk about. And I think they should still be supported because they're great guys and they handled the situation in the best way that they could.
Absolutely. And other than that, I found news that Tom Cruise might actually go to space for an upcoming film.
Of course. Of course, it's Tom Cruise.
Yeah, he wants to do his next film in and or on the International Space Station. So shooting the movie on the International Space Station.
I'm doing a very audible eye roll.
So I wouldn't just be Tom Cruise being on the International Space Station. Obviously, they'd have to shoot some more people up there. Yeah, like they'd have to shoot a film crew up there to shoot Tom
There are
Cruise
more
on the
important things they're
Space
doing
Station.
on the space station than letting Tom Cruise go up there.
And shooting a movie up there. I mean, it's if they shot Tom Cruise up there and he just shot a selfie of himself in the space station, like, this is the movie. But he can't do that, though. Like, that's not professionalism. I mean, it could be done, but I would assume they would actually shoot, a cinematographer up there with Tom Cruise. And
so dumb.
Yeah.
Anyways, you didn't even talk about the biggest news that I was going to talk about that I thought you would talk about.
Tell me more.
That is that we finally got the trailer for the Super Mario Brothers movie.
That's true. And
I wanted to bring it up earlier when we were talking about Jurassic World because we brought up
I almost
Chris
did.
Pratt, but I was like, no, I'll keep it in until we get to this part.
I almost did, and I gotta say, Chris Pratt is probably my least favorite part of the entire trailer.
Yeah, no, not probably. He is. And the thing is, like, leading up to this, Chris Pratt was always like so secretive, like, oh, I'm gonna have a voice, like Mario voice. And the trailer comes out and it's his normal fucking voice.
Yeah.
It doesn't sound it's so upsetting.
In his defense, I will say he hardly talks at all in the trailer. He just says, what is this place?
You get enough that it's not gonna be good. And it's just upsetting because like Jack Black as Bowser sounds so good.
Yeah, he sounds badass in that trailer.
The comedy the idea that I'm getting just from the fight with like the penguins and like the Koopas and stuff, I feel like it could be like a gem, a nice little gem. Then you got freaking Chris Pratt.
And he just jumps in. What is this place?
Ruining everything, honestly, that man. I can't even. And then the other big news. Ready?
Go for it.
Hugh Jackman is coming back to play Wolverine.
Is this going to be the elderly version of X-Men?
No, you haven't seen?
No.
Deadpool 3. Hugh Jackman's coming back to reprise his role in the new Deadpool movie with Ryan Reynolds.
Well, that'll be interesting.
Yeah, I'm excited. I mean, no one else could play Wolverine. I feel like they should never remake it because Hugh Jackman is Wolverine.
Well, that's all I've got for film news. Laura, anything else you'd like to say?
No, I think the big things I wanted to talk about was the Mario Brothers movie and Hugh Jackman. So that was the most important things to me this past week.
And on that note, that brings us into this week's film, Hush.
Let's talk about it.
Hush your mouth as we talk about this movie.
Don't tell me what to do.
Hush. Sounds like a children's toy. Like, oh, I went to Target and picked up this week's Hush.
And I think of Hush Puppies.
Well, that sounds good too. Hush from March 12th, 2016, directed by Mike Flanagan, written by Mike Flanagan and Kate Siegal, produced by Trevor Macy and Jason Blum, starring John Gallagher Jr., Michael Trucco and Kate Siegal. Cinematography by James Kneast or Kneast. Edited by Mike Flanagan. Music by the Newton Brothers. Production companies include Blumhouse Productions and Intrepid Pictures. The film was distributed by Netflix, and release was, as I said, March 12th, 2016 for South by Southwest, and April 8th in the United States. So if we want to say official release date, then April 8th, 2016. But it was released for South by Southwest goers March 12th. Interesting. I mean, it'd be cool to have seen this film.
We should go to South by Southwest one time.
So that'd be fun.
How do we get in?
You get a ticket.
Oh, like normal people can go? It's not just like critics?
Yeah, I mean, like that's where a lot of people go to see bands is South by Southwest.
Let's go.
It's a huge festival.
Okay. We're going to go next time. Anyway, can we talk about Mike Flanagan?
Tell me all about Mike Flanagan.
Mike Flanagan. I mean, I don't know about his life personally, but the writer director of this movie, he is kind of like, I feel like at this moment, one of the preeminent spooky horror creators on Netflix. All of his stuff comes out on Netflix, but I think it should go beyond just Netflix. So Michael Flanagan is the man that brought us The Haunting of Hill House, which to this day I think is one of the best horror TV shows I have ever seen. He brought us the sequel to that series, Bly Manor. He's also brought us Midnight Mass, which is kind of a little Easter egg tie-in I was going to mention with this movie as well. He has directed Gerald's Game, which is an adaptation of a Stephen King novel that's also on Netflix. He also directed Dr. Sleep. So he's so good at what he does. And I mean, like I said, I think Haunting of Hill House is one of the best horror series I've ever seen. And so, yeah, that's what I just wanted to mention. He really is like one of the top horror creators, I think, of this time. And the fact that he's working with Jason Blum and Blumhouse, like, what horror film in the last 8 years like has come out that hasn't been a Blumhouse production? You know, I think they again are one of the preeminent production companies of horror films right now, and good horror films. So the fact that you have kind of the two of them together on this, I think is a good sign.
I think that's a great breakdown on Mike Flanagan. And I think that's very interesting because with this particular film, I was very curious when it first started out. I thought it was really going to move in a lot of interesting directions as it progressed. It was a very slow kind of start to kind of get the ball rolling. But then I was really hoping the speed would pick up a little bit as we started to get more in depth in the middle. And to be honest, I don't think I really got that as we got more along. And I think you and I will start to talk a little bit about that as we get more in detail about the movie. But I think just to get a little more into that, it's just with the introduction. I understand if a film is going to be a little slow paced to introduce characters, introduce their qualities, and introduce maybe some more supporting characters.
And
tell
honestly,
us a little bit about
some
them.
of the better horror films lately have been ones that are slower paced.
Right.
Like look at The Witch or It Follows or The Babadook. You know,
Sure.
like I feel like it's a thing now and it works as long as you're able to keep someone hooked enough.
But even the antagonist of this film and the protagonist, the antagonist, and all of the supporting characters, everything like that.
Two of them.
I mean, it wasn't a very
cast.
heavy cast, anything like that. It was just a slow movement for the entire thing. And I can get behind that if the movie's really got the psychology and all of that for me to sit there and be like, all right, you got me, like, let's keep going. What's going to be the next move? But at the same time, I think with the antagonist in this film, it's like, really? Like, what should I be surprised with here?
Yeah. No, I agree with you. You know, as I opened this kind of talking about how Michael Flanagan is like one of the best horror writers of our time right now, I do think this movie falls a bit short. And we'll talk about that. But a lot of it goes to what you were saying, Adam, that is quite slow. It's very repetitive. It's quite predictable. You know, I think it has some really good gems And there's some really great moments where you see like what it could have been. I think it just falls a little flat, but we'll get into that more, I think, as we start talking about the plot. Also, just to mention, fun fact, Kate Siegal, who is the star in this movie, she is also married to Mike Flanagan, and they wrote this together. And actually, while they were writing, it was like the two of them at their home. And there's not a lot of writing. There's not a lot of script, I'll say, right? Because there's only like 15 minutes of dialogue in the whole movie because our main character is mute and deaf, so she doesn't speak. And so the script really that they worked on together was mostly just like movements and ideas of what a scene would look like, right? So the two of them kind of like pretending to try to murder each other in their house like to write this movie. Can you imagine being the neighbors?
Oh.
you're like, why is Mike out there chasing Kate?
Yeah.
But I think the fact that they worked on this together and they are obviously married, they have that relationship, I think that kind of helped.
Yeah, absolutely. And so with that being said, just to give a quick synopsis of what the plot of the film overall truly is, just in summary, a deaf writer who retreated into the woods to live a solitary life must fight for her life in silence when a masked killer appears in her window.
Yeah. So, as I said, it's kind of pretty repetitive. Essentially, after we get the setup where we learn who she is, and then we see the killer, you know, she sees him and realizes that she's being pursued by this man. It's the movie that is pretty much just like scene by scene by scene of either her trying to escape and him stopping her, or him trying to kill her and her escaping. It's just like, it's this formula, this very repetitive formula of the same thing happening over and over and over again. And I think that's one of the parts that I don't like, is that it was very, very repetitive. Right. And there were times where I told you, Adam, I was like, you know, when she like stabbed him with an arrow, right? It's like, why didn't she just stab him through the eye and we could have been done with it, right? Like there were so many times I feel like she could have killed him, but instead she just kind of like hindered him. I don't know.
And what sort of bothered me after seeing so many movies in my life and horror films such as this or something, I think the predictability factor in my head, it's like a light that's going off. And so I'm thinking in my head, my assumption is saying, all right, well, I'm about 20 minutes into the film or so, and he's already introduced. So I've still got about an hour left.
It is a shorter movie, but yeah.
Yeah, but even still, it's like an hour and 20 minutes. And so for this next hour, I'm thinking, well, she can't kill him like only half an hour in. She can't kill him that fast. If she did, then I definitely would have been surprised, and I would be thinking, I'm very curious to see where is this going to go. And that would have been something that I may have really enjoyed. Yeah. But that's beside the point. The point being, if she can't kill him for the next hour, then what's going to happen? And so with that being in mind, if she can't kill this man for the next hour, what is the camera going to focus on, or what are we going to be watching for the next hour? And it just so happens that all of the time, 90% of the time, the camera's just focusing on her. She's mute and deaf. And so it's just like we're watching her and seeing like, when is this guy going to show up in her window, or where is he going to be? There's a little bit of surprise there from time to time. There's some good moments. Like there's some good moments in this movie, but overall, yes, very, very repetitive and very predictable. I mean, from the opening scene, right? We saw that corkscrew, and I immediately was like, well, obviously that's coming into play later in the movie. And then we get that fire alarm going off, and I was like, okay, that's obviously going to happen again later in the movie. Right.
You know what I mean? Like, yes, that's not a thing just to this movie. Lots of movies are predictable. Lots of movies use foreshadowing. I get that.
Right.
But it just for some reason, when they do it in horror films, it seems cheaper. And I think it's just because it's the way that horror films kind of work and the tropes that are used over and over. And I'm not saying that to diss horror films, because I absolutely love horror films. But the thing is, I think it's just harder to make like a good horror film because you kind of have that going on.
Yeah, and I enjoyed how they sort of established her character being a mute and deaf writer, because I think they still played very well with the sound design in this movie.
100%.
They introduced her character by allowing us to hear her making dinner for herself. We could hear the eggs cracking. We could hear the sizzling in the pan and everything. The focus was on the dinner itself to start.
Mm-hmm.
So we're hearing and seeing the food that's being made. But then as soon as we see her character, they just eliminated the sound.
And we hear like what she hears.
Exactly.
Which is essentially like white noise.
Pretty much, yeah.
And that's 100% what I was going to say, Adam. Like the one gem, the shining moment of this movie, I would say, is the sound design. Because exactly like you said, in that first opening scene, we get all these really vibrant and like loud noises of her cooking dinner. And then it shifts instantly to just like ambient white noise. And we're realizing that's what she hears. And I feel like they do that at times throughout the movie in a good way, like a way to build suspense, right? Like we can't hear where the guy is, like where the killer's coming from, right?
Mm-hmm.
So I think that's like one of the really special moments of this movie is the sound design. But I don't know if it was enough to get over the other parts of the movie.
And she also explained to her friend who had come over to visit through sign language. They were speaking to each other in ASL about her writing, the main character's writing, because she had written another new book, and the friend was explaining how she read it, how it was so good. And she was asking how she writes such wonderful endings. And the main character had said that she always comes up with 7 different endings or multiple different endings.
Multiple endings. She can like see them play out like a movie.
Yeah. So that's her excuse for being such a good writer with writing. The main character happens to write violent books too. She writes these like murder novels.
Fun Easter egg, right? So the book that she wrote already that's been published is called Midnight Mass, which is then a miniseries that Mike Flanagan created for Netflix after this movie. So a nice little Easter egg tie-in. And Kate Siegal is in, I think she's also in Midnight Mass. She's definitely in Haunting of Hill House. I think that's a thing now. Directors use the same actors for a lot of their projects, right? Like Wes Anderson does that.
Yeah.
Steven Spielberg does that. Or not Spielberg so much. I meant to say Scorsese. You know, like
Martin Scorsese.
Yeah, a lot of those directors like to use the same actors, which makes sense because you work together and you know each other. And I think Flanagan kind of does the same thing.
Mm-hmm. And she also happened to have a Stephen King book on her shelf.
Which, fun Easter egg, Mike Flanagan then made Gerald's Game, which is an adaptation of a Stephen King novel.
It all comes tying together.
All ties together.
But it makes sense, too, then, how, although she is mute and deaf, how she would be good at escaping from this serial killer, or how she would have an understanding of ways to get around this serial killer, or understand.
And she already writes kind of
because,
like...
she writes books on killers and things like that.
Yeah. And I think, I don't know if we want to go into detail... Again, people, literally the movie is just scene after scene of her either trying to escape and him catching or her trying to like hurt him.
Can I also say, where was Craig in all this? She's talking to this guy on her phone named Craig.
Ex-boyfriend.
Yeah, an ex-boyfriend. And
I thought Craig was going to show up.
I did too. That would have been a nice surprise.
Maybe that's the one good non-predictable thing about this movie, because I was expecting Craig to show up the whole time.
I kind of hoped he did, but then he didn't.
He did
and
not.
It's like,
no.
Where's Craig?
But yeah, again, I don't know. I'm trying to. Maybe this is like to the movie's detriment. I'm trying to think of a scene that like stands out to me, and literally I can't. Like. The killer has a crossbow, so there's scenes where he's like shooting her with a crossbow. They both somehow get on the roof, right? And like she gets the crossbow from him, but she can't load it because it's hard to pull the string back. Like those are the things I remember, but I don't remember like specific scenes or things that happened.
Well, I remember one not too far off from that, but there's the one where she gets the crossbow and she's trying to load the crossbow and she can't load it to save her life, basically. Not literally, metaphorically.
Well, she's already hurt.
She's trying to load
she was
that
shot in the
crossbow.
leg with the crossbow, so she's already hurt. And she's trying to like pull the string back and she just can't because it's hard.
Yeah. And the killer calls her out on that. He's like, yeah, it's kind of hard, isn't it? But he can load the crossbow in like 2 seconds because he does it so much. He's always loading it.
It takes him time, though. It is a bit of a...
Yeah, it is a little hard, but he gets it. But he calls her out for not being able to load it. Then there's the time where she is in the house and he's coming at her. and she's trying to close the door because she's running in there. And he shuts the door on her hand, I believe.
And like
stomps on her hand like 5 or 6 times or something, and cracks like all of her fingers.
Which, if you think, if you think
positioning.
about it too, as she's deaf, she uses her hands to communicate.
Right.
Like she has to use her hands for ASL, and so the fact that he
like broke all of her fingers,
smashed and ruined one of her hands, he's therefore like ruined like her way of communicating.
Yeah,
you know,
basically.
Yeah, I like. Literally, that just popped into my head as you were talking about it. I was like, shit, that means she had to sign with just one hand.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, I forgot about that scene. It was, ugh.
Yeah, all of her fingers on that one hand were essentially just completely disoriented.
I do like how she definitely took on the persona of like the final girl, you know, another horror film trope. But like in the beginning, you can see she's scared. But as it gets towards the end, I think she's taunting him, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like she writes on the door, like, come in and try, like, you coward. She's definitely taunting him. I think maybe too she's kind of resigned to the fact that she was gonna die, because she wrote that like goodbye letter to her family.
Mm-hmm.
So I think she was just like, fuck it, like, let me just try to take him out with me, I guess.
Well, she wrote that, and she also described what he looked like in case she did die.
Right.
So,
but I definitely think she took on that final girl persona where she was eventually just like, you know what, I'm not gonna be afraid. I'm gonna try to save myself, and I'm gonna take care of this guy. And that's when we get finally the end scene where she's able to take him out.
But she set up sort of a trap situation in the house
traps.
too. So a bunch of booby traps in the house. So if he did, and when he did break into the house, then there'd be this sort of trap situation.
Well, because she like sprays him with wasp spray, right? In the eyes. And then she sets off her fire alarm, which is very loud and has lots of flashing lights, because obviously she wouldn't hear a normal fire alarm. So that like disorients him. Then she's able to knock him down, but he still is like choking her, very much like he was overpowering her. And she takes that corkscrew that I saw in the opening scene and jams it through his neck.
Yep. He gets corkscrewed right in the neck.
Not fun. But yeah.
Then the cops show up.
And there's a cat that survives through the whole movie.
Yes.
The cat's name is Bitch.
Little bitch or something. Yeah.
But again, yeah. And that's really it. Like, I feel like we barely talked about the plot, but that's because it just was a cat and mouse game the whole movie.
It is essentially what it is.
Yeah.
And that's the thing. I mean, there's plenty of films out there that are kind of like that, where it is cat and mouse. It is very much someone being chased and someone running away. Take a look at Steven Spielberg's Catch Me If You Can. That's the same thing. It's cat and mouse. It's, Leonardo DiCaprio.
I think the thing that made this one
Tom Hanks is playing
very
Seek.
repetitive, though, is that it's all taking place in one place. It's all just in this one house. Right. So how varied can they be?
And on a similar note, you could take a look at The Witch, which is not exactly a cat and mouse game. It takes place on a farm, but
they go to the woods. They step outside a little bit.
Sort of. It's basically a young girl's discovering like there's demonic things happening on their farm, and she might be tied to them.
But you're right. It is kind of like one central place.
And then her family is saying like, don't believe in Satan and don't get connected to that.
I think the one setting, though, was like having the film set in one place, one house, was also a challenge to Flanagan, though. I remember reading an article saying that he found it challenging to be in this one single location to kind of come up with more ideas. And so what he decided to do, I guess, was to essentially follow around Kate, the main actress, with a steady cam, and essentially just like follow her as she's running around doing this. But then he was saying, but because they did that, they followed her with like a steady cam and a boom mic to like film the movie. But it was so loud, like them, like herd of elephants following her around, and the fact that the movie doesn't have dialogue, that they essentially had to do like all of the sound for the movie in ADR. They had to do like everything later. Even her breathing, she had to like go and film later for them to put in.
Yeah, that would make sense.
Yeah. They did only film the movie, though, in like 18 days. It didn't take them very long, which makes sense. There's like 2 people in the movie. There's 4 technically, but 2 of them die pretty quickly after they show up.
Right.
So a small cast, not a lot of dialogue you have to remember. I guess you can film it pretty quickly.
Yeah, I mean, it's just one of those things with this movie where I think I appreciate the fact that it's all in one location. I love the concept. I especially love the fact that the main character is deaf and mute and they're a talented writer. I love the backstory and everything on that being our protagonist. And then there's this creepy young serial killer that's trying to take her out.
One of the things there's never a motive for like why the serial killer was doing
he
what he was doing.
he never does explain why
and
he
maybe
wants to
that
take
makes
her
it
out.
scarier because he
Right.
has no motive. I don't know. I always like to have a motive.
Yeah, like why is he coming specifically for her? That's really the thing. He takes out her neighbor that's her friend, and then he's just kind of outside her place like, hey, Kate.
Yeah. We never really know why, though.
Or would it be Kate? Or what
No,
was
Kate's the name of the actress. Sarah
Right, but-
Maddie is the character's
Oh,
name.
yeah, so it'd be, hey, Maddie.
Hey, Maddie.
Hey, Maddie.
Yeah, I know, too. This movie got a little bit of backlash from the hearing impaired community because obviously Kate Siegal is deaf, and this was a real opportunity for them to cast someone who is a deaf actress. Again, I think Mike Flanagan and Kate have spoken to that, and they say, yes, obviously we realized we could have done that, but we're on a tight schedule and, 18 days, make this movie. We wrote it together. But still, I think it would have been a good opportunity to cast someone that actually fits the role. And I think too, I was reading there were like some inconsistencies with the ASL that they used, and that, obviously Kate Siegal is not like,
All right, that's fair.
she doesn't speak or not speak, she doesn't use ASL. So obviously she probably learned what she needed to for the movie, but there's, because the way I know one of the things I was reading is that we, when we speak and we ask questions, usually our voice goes up, like we inflect, when we're asking a question or something.
Mhm.
And those who use ASL kind of do the same thing with their face. So they may use like raise their eyebrows or facial expressions to help convey that they're asking a question versus like making a statement. And they were saying, a lot of the signing that was happening in the movie wasn't really following those kind of like other nonverbal cues they use other than their hands. But
Sure. Yeah, I'm sure it would have been very helpful to have a true hearing impaired actor.
Other than that,
or
though, the
actress.
other reviews for this movie are actually pretty good.
Yeah, I mean, the film has a 93% by critics on Rotten Tomatoes and a 73% from audience.
Which is high for a horror movie.
I think it's high for this movie.
Yeah, no, I agree. I would agree. I pulled out one of the reviews that I thought, I always like to pull out one review that kind of summarizes what my feelings are too. So the one review I pulled out that I agree with, it says that Hush has a solid first half before the cat and mouse shenanigans begin to seem repetitive and prolonged. Still, at 82 minutes, it is a concise and well-executed horror nightmare.
It's very interesting.
Yeah. I will say Roger Ebert, Brian Tellerico reviewed this. He only gave it 2.5 stars. So kind of agreeing with that.
Understandably so. I agree.
But on the other hand, a lot of really famous horror directors, such as like Stephen King and the man that directed The Exorcist, have like loved this movie and talked about how good it is. So to each their own.
Well, I think with all of that in mind, I do want to say one fun fact before we get into our final review, but I did read that apparently this film has been remade twice in India in the year 2019.
Two different Indian films?
That's right.
Wow.
One in Hindi and one in
Tamil?
Yes, that's correct. So both in 2019.
Maybe we should watch one of them.
I'd be curious to see how they were redone.
Yeah. Maybe we'll look that up when we're done. If it's streaming somewhere.
But with that being said, I believe that takes into our Slurps Up or Slurps Down section of our episode. Slurps Up meaning we recommend this film, we think you should check it out, and we think that it is worth viewing. And Slurps Down meaning we don't think you should watch it. We do not think that it's worth watching, and we think that it belongs in the garbage with Oscar the Grouch? ? Laura?
So I was going into this episode planning to give it a Slurps Up, but I honestly think I'm going to change my mind, and I'm going to say Slurps Down. which is hard for me to say because, again, I think Mike Flanagan has made some amazing things. So I think what I'm going to say is Slurps down. This movie, again, as I've already said throughout the episode, very predictable, very repetitive. It just felt, I don't know. It didn't do it for me. Like Jurassic World Dominion. It didn't do it for me. So I would suggest instead go and watch something else that Mike Flanagan has made. Go and watch The Haunting of Hill House, which I will say for the third time is the best horror television series I think I have ever seen. And I'm saying that with strong feelings. It's so good. Go watch that instead. Instead of this, go watch Haunting of Hill House. I'm just going to stop there. Adam?
Laura, that's a very interesting summary you gave. And honestly, I'm going to agree 100% for the most part. I'm also going to say Slurps down on this film. And my interest that was in this film, the only real interest I think with this film would be the fact that our protagonist was mute and deaf and fighting a serial killer. And the sound design in this film, in contrast to that, is really cool how they play with that. But otherwise, I felt that I was really just sitting there for an hour and 20 minutes and waiting and waiting for a real surprise to come and hit me out of the woods. And I don't think I ever really got anything, not anything worth wanting to go back and see this film again. So
I think if you want a film with kind of a similar vibe, I would suggest When a Stranger Calls. That's another one where it's one place, it's like one house, and it's a babysitter, a woman who is being haunted like by this man who's trying to kill her. Go watch that one.
Or just another creepy movie that does have surprises.
You watch whatever you want to watch, people.
Yeah. Go watch Hereditary. That's a nice creepy movie.
Yeah, that's a good movie.
So there's something for you. But this movie, Slurps down.
Honestly, I so surprised I went with Slurps down. I really thought I was going to give this a yes until you got to sit on things sometimes and you really got to think about them.
Could you just hush over there?
Hush, hush.
Hush your mouth.
Hush, hush, hush was another name of a book series.
What did I just say?
Listen. As I was talking about Blue Bloods and like Vampire Academy, there was a series, another fantasy series I read as a kid. It was called Hush Hush. And I think it was a fallen angel.
That wraps it up for this episode of Screen Slurps. Be sure to follow us on social media at Screen Slurps on Instagram, Twitter, Facebook, and TikTok. And be sure to listen to us on Spotify, Ghana, or any other podcast streaming service out there. And if you enjoy what you hear, slide on over to Apple Podcasts and give us a 5-star rating. It will help us a lot. And if there's any crazy movies that you want to hear about, let us know. Leave a comment on one of our social media pages, and trust me when I say we will be sure to talk about it. So closing out, I'm Adam Meisner.
I'm Laura Herlocker.
Slurps up, and we will catch you later.
Tell me the fantasy series you read as a kid.